I think one of the main things I want to say to teachers and parents is just because I say give yourself some grace, it doesn't mean we stop showing up.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another Conversations in Community, a show where we have informed conversations while building a bigger community. And hopefully that's been happening for you. I know it has for me. You just heard Dr. Jenny Severson. She is a former teacher, principal, and now educational psychologist, as well as an author. You can find these books and all about her at her website at jennyseverson.com. One book is Thrive, Channeling Your Courage, Speaking Your Truth, and Shining in the Midst of Life's Challenges. The other one is The Educator's 180-Day Gratitude Turnaround. It's a self-reflection journal for educators. And she's got a lot of great things to say, not just for educators who right now their tank, I'm sure, is empty. So she has a lot of tips on how to fill that tank back up. But then also, conversely, a lot of the tips that she has for teachers can also be relatable to parents like me. We started off by me asking her just some general tips that she gives both to educators but also parents through the lens of an educational psychologist. Take a listen.
The two things that are really paramount for me are grace and gratitude. I think one of the most important things we have to offer each other during this season is a lot of grace and a lot of gratitude. We have a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. Whatever we focus on expands. So if toxic thinking, can that make us not well? Yeah, it's a real thing. If we knew how powerful our thought life was, we would be really focused on what we were thinking, doing, learning, and communicating. And so I think it's really important for people to understand where the attention goes, the energy flows, and that we are living and breathing in a really hard season. And there have been real losses and real disruptions to people's lives. So I don't want to negate any of this. This is not you rah-rah or pretending to be happy. We have to acknowledge the stages of grief, denying that this was going to last this long, the anger around the disruptions, the bargaining, the actual depression that some teachers are experiencing, and then finally the acceptance of how we can show up in different spaces. And the other big thing is that we're designed to take breaks. We're designed to take breaks. You are designed to take breaks. And if you keep going and going and going, Zoom after Zoom after Zoom, and you don't stop to walk around, you don't stop to do some breathing, you don't get margin in your day before the day starts or at the end of the day, you're setting yourself up for chronic fatigue, chronic stress, and I know from personal experience that will kill you. So this isn't to be taken lightly. You've got to create margin and space to do something in your day that you enjoy, and just kind of unplug from some of the noise.
Mm-hmm. There's so much in there that I want to unpack. The one part you talked about, you have personal experience with this. This isn't just something that you've studied, of course, and you with your experience in the classroom, but you have personal experience about how to meander some very highs, but also deep, deep lows. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I went ahead and I published my story in originally a book with five of us total women in a book called Thrive. And I took that story and I added some new layers and nuances to it in the gratitude book. And I published that story to just share my own spiritual journey in walking through a health crisis, walking through death of a loved one, walking through a series of events that all happened in a really short amount of time. And one of the reasons I wrote the gratitude book was to give people an opportunity to self-reflect, because I had experienced that 2 years prior. And when the pandemic hit, fear, uncertainty, disruption, all of these anxious feelings started to resurface that we've now collectively experienced as a global community, and wanted to make sure that we really understand the power of our thinking and where we place our attention during these difficult times. And gratitude has a sister emotion called optimism. If you can't be grateful for something right now, what can you look forward to? And what I'm doing with schools right now in Utah, Chicago, and Texas is we're doing Tank Full Tuesdays, Wellness Wednesdays, and Thankful Thursdays. And with each of these schools, we hop on for 20 minutes and I present a short piece of content. We go no longer than 20 minutes. And one of the focuses is the book and practicing gratitude. So it's about committing to a gratitude practice and then honoring that commitment. Now, that commitment doesn't have to look like a list of things on a piece of paper. That commitment can look like laying in bed before the end of the night and experiencing a moment in your day where the freshness of the fall leaves hit you and the sun was coming through the trees, and your kiddo got off the bus and you got a hug from my little first grader. I'll talk about my own experience.
What's the science behind that?
Dr. Daniel Amen does a particular brain scan. It's called the SPECT scan, SPECT. And on that scan, he has, when you're focused on gratitude, how your brain is actually shifting and changing. So the electrical and chemical energy, the work, a neuroscientist would call the work, meaning the axon, dendrite, terminal, the synapses, the myelination, the focus of that, actually physically changes in your brain. It's like a positive spiral up or a negative spiral down. Guess what? If you're having a bad moment or a bad day, you're just 10 minutes away from a new thought pattern. Those neurons, axons, dendrites are literally scaffolding together to formulate and make connections and build hardwired neural networks. I also want to say to teachers, what a great way to start your class, your virtual classroom. Hey, type in the chat something that you're grateful for. If you've got a gratitude, put your hand on your forehead. All right. I'm calling on Jenny, and then Jenny's going to call on Jay, and you popcorn style through that Zoom so that there's a little bit more energy, there's a little bit more focus, and we could even have that dynamic happening in the virtual space. One of the biggest things I wanted to share is this if-then type statements. So if my Google Meet link doesn't work, then I will email the teacher, make a phone call, have an action plan. Instead of the upset that comes from it, we can do a lot of rehearsing when in situations like if you and I, we keep walking into the same situation and it's not going well, start to think of, okay, if I walk into my daughter's room after this call and she's not on her math assignment and she's on a different screen, then I will talk about the consequences of what we're going to do with that. We're just doing simple things like that take the emotion out of it.
Getting back to educators, I'm curious, what have you heard from them as far as some of the things that they're working through right now, and what advice have you given them besides some of the stuff that we've already talked about?
Some of the most brilliant, bright people that I know are exhausted, overwhelmed, working way too many hours. They're in situations where they don't have planning time. They're teaching this group and then they're videoing this. I mean, it's a lot. And so many of the things that I've been sharing with them is just about some of the trying to bring life into Zoom, right? Like, hey, we're here to have fun. F-U-N. F stands for go get a fork or something that begins with the letter F. U, kid brings an umbrella. N, ninja shows up here. Or get your dad's necktie or a hat or some kind of prop that you're interested in. And it's like, hey, green and growing people, let's be green and growing. Just how can we try to lighten the load of the heaviness of what's going on? So self-care, being grateful for the circumstances, offering yourself and others grace, and really, really ask for help, ask for what you need, and keep taking action. But the 3 A's are the biggest thing I go to for myself and for teachers is, okay, awareness, acceptance, action. We're hardwired for fear, anger, disgust, sadness, and joy. So don't make yourself wrong for going into the negative. We're actually hardwired to go there first. That's why we have to practice different keys on the piano and get to gratitude, optimism, empathy, kindness. Here's what I want everyone to know. I've worked in schools for over 2 decades, getting kids that were really behind, like 2 to 3 years behind in subjects like algebra, in subjects like science, and brought them up to grade level. So here's what I want you to remember, that the brain can change and the brain can accelerate learning in a really fast way when conditions are optimal. And right now we're not in optimal conditions. There is going to be some holes, some gaps, some shifts, some changes, but kids can catch up. They can. We are wired for resilience. We're wired for survival, and we can do this. It's not going to be easy, but we can do it. Just take it one day at a time.